our co-host is in.
I really am. I am. If you want the actual physical book, remember, they are behind Marcia. Raise your hand, Marcia. They're behind Marcia, so, make sure to, if you want them.
Oh, I didn't really, I didn't have something in Paris, yeah, so, yeah.
I think I could be more.
Oh.
And I thought it was in the winter. Oh, that's. Yeah, yeah. And they had, she said, December, so. We just listed, I think, okay, we're gonna tell already. Okay, whatever.
Remind me next year.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Little statues. Morning.
Maybe you could go to his way when we give it. Always it's over there. You know. Ever go to Art Fest? No. It's in Miami. Well, it's in Switzerland, you couldn't. No. Place. Okay. But that was a grown, I know that you was.
Okay. Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Booker Tov, how's everybody?
Great.
Wonderful. Hey, hello. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Tara. Good to see everybody. So we have such a great Torah portion this week.
Is it your favorite?
It's one of my favorite. I say it every week and I'm glad, and you're listening, so that's awesome.
It's a rabbinic thing.
It's one of the things we do. You would want us to think that every Torah page portion is our favorite, wouldn't you? Otherwise, we should be in a different line of work. So one of the things I love about this week's Torah portion is the movement. There's a lot of energy in this Torah portion. There's a different cadence to the way that the verses are written that is different than some of the other parshas that we've read, where there's more of the story that is drawn out, or there's a moment in time and then we move on to the next moment in time. This one reads as if you are reading like the script of a movie, right? Like there's continuous movement. We are in the moment with them. You can feel the energy of the people. Remember last week they learned that they were going to be redeemed. This week now they're starting to go. So there's an interesting cadence with the rhythm of the reading that we're going to experience. And then it culminates in Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea. Okay? Which if you're coming tonight to synagogue, which I hope you are, this is Shabbat Shirah, the Shabbat of song. So we're going to have a very musical, amazing service tonight. And we will culminate in the reading of this section. My watch has a lot to say recently, which is weird. We'll culminate in the reading of the Torah of the Song of the Sea, which we all know a portion of that very well, which is Michamocha, which we sing every week. And it comes from this section of Torah. So what I want to do is I want us to start in chapter 14, which is the very beginning of Bishalach, the Torah portion for this week. And then we're going to get to Shirat Hayam in chapter 15. But it's really important to me that we read the chapter before the sea, before the Song of the Sea, so that we can hear the rhythm and the cadence and the movement. We're feeling the energy and what the people are experiencing. And then we're going to dissect what the Shirat Hayam is, what the Song of the Sea is. When I say the Song of the Sea, what are the first things that come to your mind? Who do you see? Who do you hear? What? See something like that, 100%, right? Like just think about for a moment when that movie was made, right? Like with the water like that, like it's so great, right? Like it's so awesome. All right, great. What else do you see? What else do you hear? Miriam, right? Miriam, we hear Miriam. What else do we, when we say Miriam, what are we hearing? Timbrels, right? We're hearing timbrels. And the women dancing with their timbrels, right? Follow Miriam as she sang her song. Okay, we hear Miriam, we see Miriam, we imagine Miriam on the other side of the sea dancing. Anything else? Yeah,
Egyptian dying.
okay. Egyptians dying, right? Because the waters close on the line. So water's parting and water's crashing in. Okay, that's a really an interesting motif to explore, right? The waters part, then the waters close in. Okay, what else? Good start.
The fear as they're between the water before to meet the milk. The chariots coming out, they can see the chariots, this.
Yes,
That's the
Terror.
terror, fear, right? And imagine the moment standing on this, on the shore itself, like you've just left and fled this place of bondage and darkness. And now all of a sudden you're stopped, literally in your tracks because there's a sea there. And you're trying to figure out, how, is this a big joke? Right, and not a funny one, meaning like, you said we were being redeemed, you said that we were gonna be to get to freedom, and now all of a sudden we're stuck in front of a sea that we can't get across. Right, it's not a puddle, right, it's a massive sea, and how are they gonna get across it? And so you can imagine the mix of emotions, which we will hear in just a moment. Right?
And the bus can't get back for more than 18 minutes.
What?
And the bus can't get, when they're crossing, the bus can't get back for more than 18 minutes.
Right, 'cause there's so many issues, there's so many things to worry about.
Why?
I think of faith and courage.
Okay,
Faith that the sea will somehow open, and the courage of that one old man who like walks ahead of everyone.
right, yeah. How do you know he was old?
I don't know that he was old. I thought we said old last year. I don't remember if it was Mr.
No, I just think it's fascinating. I don't mean like, I'm actually curious, like, we don't know, so there's a midrash. About a man who takes the first step. Nachshon ben Aminadab. That he takes the first step into the sea, which we'll talk about the midrash in a moment. Because I think it's integral to the actual story, because it's not in the Torah. It's a midrash. The rabbis create this story because they want to also, they're trying to fill in a gap. And when we get to that moment, I'm curious where you think and why you think the rabbis felt that they needed to fill in the story beyond just what's written with Nachshon. Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to start with a reading, an intention before we begin, and I have so many. So I'm gonna probably do a few this today, because I just felt like it was important. We'll get to that with the Song of the Sea. Because it is Shabbat Shira and it's about music and singing, I want to offer this intention. So you don't need anything right now. You can put your books down, you can put everything away, you can just listen for just a moment. Okay? We are music on this Shabbat Shira. Quiet now, listen, breathe, and listen. You are music, your breath and hands, your smile and tears, your eyes and pulse are notes that dance in the space between us. We are music, a symphony conducted by the rhythm of life, by God's hands, by our choices day by day. Our notes play on, separately, together, the sacred sound of living. Our music waltzes, making melodies fresh and new, never heard again, bass lines that pulse from our hearts to the soul of the universe. Joy bends sorrow, sorrow bends hope. Hope bends grief, grief bends love, love bends joy. Quiet now, listen, breathe, and listen. The silence is your longing, the silence is your yearning for a different song. The music of your own will blocks your hearts to the harmonies already dancing around you, to the chorus already singing around you. Oh, you hidden delight of heaven, oh, you secret gift of God, we are music, we are music. The music plays through us. Shabbat Shira. Shalom.
So,
So let's begin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. God said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp before Piharoth between Migdol and the sea. Before Baal Zephon you shall encamp facing it by the sea. Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they are astray in the land. The wilderness has closed in on them. Then I will stiffen Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them, that I may gain glory through Pharaoh and all his hosts, and the Egyptians shall know that I am God. And they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his courtiers had a change of heart about the people and said, what is it that we have done, releasing Israel from our service? He ordered his chariot and took his force with him. Okay, I'm going to start to read with the cadence of it. So if you have a question?
Yeah, why is King of Egypt and Pharaoh different words? Does it just mean Pharaoh? Yeah, verse 5. It says King of Egypt was told people have fled and Pharaoh, and are they two different people or?
I don't think so. I think it's just like saying Adonai, Elohim, like
Okay.
different names. Okay, are you ready? He ordered his chariot and took his force with him. He took 600 of his picked chariots and the rest of the chariots of Egypt with officers and all of them. God stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he gave chase to the Israelites as the Israelites were departing defiantly. The Egyptians gave chase to them, and all the chariots of horses of Pharaoh, his riders, his warriors, overtook them and encamped by the sea near Piharoth before Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. Greatly frightened, the Israelites cried out to God, and they said to Moses, was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt, saying, let us be and we will serve the Egyptians? It was better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, have no fear. Al tira'u, have no fear, stand by and witness the deliverance that God will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. God will battle for you. You hold your peace. Then God said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. I'm going to pause. What do you hear? What do you see? What's happening?
The Israelites clearly scared, cry out to God, and it doesn't sound like God's very happy they're crying out and not just running.
Okay. What else? What do you hear? What do you see? Yeah.
God is setting up a big spectacle.
Mm.
He hardens Pharaoh's heart. He pushes the Israelites forward. This is God's glorious moment.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, what else? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you not see? What do you not hear?
Well, I have a question. Why did Pharaoh get all his guys together, go chase these Israelites after the 10 plagues? Wasn't that enough? I mean, why would it be necessary for him to have his heart? I mean, that whole dynamics.
to create this big percentage
Yeah,
for
but
it's
why
one
would
of
it be necessary? If they're gonna be free and they're at free, you know.
Say it a little loud. What did you say?
The 10 plagues be enough
For who?
for the
Pharaoh.
Israelites, for the Jews, to say, oh, God is powerful, we'll go forward.
So that's what I'm trying to ask. So I'm trying to understand from which perspective. So right now you're focused on,
Oh,
wouldn't it be enough? Wasn't it enough for the Israelites to see that God is all powerful because God sent the 10 plagues? Didn't they see that God is all powerful? And why are they questioning? Is that what you're saying?
well, that's a given.
Okay, and then what's the other part that you're wrestling with?
Why would it be necessary? Why? The other part is Pharaoh. Why would Pharaoh then, after he said, okay, go, have to have his heart hardened by God to pursue and to make even if like so the biggest spectacle.
Why do you think?
I don't know. I wouldn't know. I don't know if it's necessary. That's what I'm trying to say.
For Pharaoh's heart to be hardened once again, or for Pharaoh to change his mind?
I think it's both. I think it's both.
Imagine you're Pharaoh. Okay? All of a sudden, you've let your entire workforce go.
And lost all your gold, sorry.
You lost all your gold. You let them borrow it. Right, you let all your gold and silver, but you let your workforce go. You're looking around and you're saying, what has just become of my entire empire? Also, you're looking around and you're saying, what are my people gonna think of me now?
And they lost their firstborn,
Right,
they lost the next generation.
they lost their firstborn, they lost their workforce. But for Pharaoh, it could expose weakness and vulnerability. It could expose to his people that he's not the Almighty, right? So for Pharaoh's going through a really challenging moment. What now becomes of me? What now becomes of this civilization, this community? What's next for us? Who could rise up now against me? Right? There's a lot dynamically that's going on with Pharaoh. Pharaoh has a lot to lose, not just his workforce, but his position,
Oh,
his power, his perception from his people, right? There's a lot there. But also for God hardening Pharaoh's heart too, there's an urgency. People are standing at the sea. Right? There's an urgency too. And like you were all saying, there's gotta be a big moment. What's the difference? He could take them around the sea. There's gotta be another moment. Another moment for them to recognize the power that God is willing to share and to show them in order to create this sense of connection and relationship that they don't have. Jack, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did have it before. I see here that even though God has gone through all of these wonders and signs and not miracles, just wonders and acts to prove who he is, the Israelites still blame Moses for what's going on. They don't blame God.
And why do you think that is?
Excuse me?
Why do you think that is?
I think I don't know. I think that Moses is the intermediary and God put him in that position. God wants them to follow him, but they've taken Moses as the intermediary and they blame him for all the actions that they see. And they want him to do something. They don't go say, have God do it or Adonai do it for us.
Right. What do we know about the Israelites right now?
They still have the slave mentality.
Yes,
And so they followed Moses. And I think this parting of the sea is part of the process to transition to their own power
yes.
that they hold as Israelites.
I think that's so true. I agree with you. I think they have also a primitive understanding of the world. Their understanding from Egypt is that God is a human. Divinity can also takes the human form. Pharaoh was a god. When you needed to pray to something, it was tangible, it was physical. They don't know from this omnipresent, intangible, unseen being. They're not sure what that is. But what they do know is that there's this guy standing in front of them saying, I'm gonna lead you out of here. So this I can understand, right? You're telling me what to do. You're asking me to follow you. Well, at every turn, we end up standing here at an impasse, in more danger than if you had just left us alone, right? So they have not evolved. Their notion of divinity and theology is primitive, right? And so that's the first hurdle. The other hurdle is they haven't had a chance to build any kind of relationship. There's no trust there. Faith is one thing, but faith also takes a development, comes from a place of trust, of knowing who you are. They've never had the ability to ask themselves, who am I? What is my place in this world? They don't know from that. Their lives have been in slavery and bondage. They have a bondage of mindset. They're in Mitzrayim, which is a place of narrowness. That's the root word of Mitzrayim, narrowness, constriction. They're not in expansive mind and thought and understanding. That's why the wilderness sojourn is so critically important, to their evolution as human beings and as a community and as people of faith. That takes time. They haven't even had time for their matzah to rise, right? Like, you're asking them to have a theological position on something that's incomprehensible, right? Marcia?
I'm good.
So, but you're saying that they already witnessed, 612 plays already, I mean, the 10 plays.
Jewish counting.
They already witnessed the plays, so those were all theologically inspired, they weren't Moses doing those things.
But from them, well, so there's a balance there, right? Like, the first thing is for them, in their understanding of the world, Moses goes before Pharaoh. Moses leaves Pharaoh, plagues fall. So like, Moses will say, God brings on these plagues.
But they're attributing.
But they're right there, that's what they understand. There's a human form, there's a being that's saying, follow me, right? Moses can tell them all day long, but they haven't experienced that relationship yet. It's also a fascinating piece as to why this moment, when we leave Egypt, to take us to Sinai should not take 49 days, realistically, from where they are to where Sinai we think is, does not take 49 days. But it had to take 49 days. There is no way this group of people, right? It is right, because it says from the moment we leave Egypt to when we get to the mountain Sinai, it's technically 49 days. That's the counting of the Omer. There's 70. Right, 49 days. Doesn't take that long. Even for someone, even schlepping a lot of stuff, doesn't take that long. Okay? But it had to take that long. Can you imagine? It wouldn't be unrealistic to think that they could cross the sea and then be at Sinai the next morning, 2 days later, 3 days later. But psychologically, theologically, philosophically, spiritually, emotionally, physically, they are not ready to stand at Sinai. They're barely ready to stand at Sinai when they do stand at Sinai. It takes us another 3 books of Torah to get really in the know about what this thing is that we're carrying with us, right? So it's really fascinating. The Torah does such an interesting job of creating the journey. The journey doesn't start now, right? The journey starts really from the moment we enter into Egypt. Because as a people, from the very beginning of Joseph, that we have all studied together, the moment of entering into Egypt, seeking sustenance, food, we then create a community there. And we grow in such numbers because it's a good place for us to be. To then a new Pharaoh arises and we're in bondage and darkness and slavery and imagining and experiencing all the elements and then lead us to this moment running towards the sea. To then stopping at the sea. Also, a really interesting moment that didn't have to happen per se. And in fact, we didn't need to set up an entire framework around the splitting of the sea. It could have just split. But it doesn't just split. We're building to a split in the sea. Now there's so many beautiful midrashim that are written that talk about this moment at the sea as being the birth canal. That we are in the womb and we go through the birth canal and are birthed. And so we become infants at the other side of the sea. Which is also a beautiful image to understanding our growth as a people through the natural maturation of human growth and development, right? The idea that we are birthed in that moment, and then the next stage is getting to Sinai, which is about gaining insight, intellect, wisdom, that then you're just going to grow through our minds and our hearts and our souls and our physical growth. So if we imagine this moment to also be that birth canal, that what it is like to be in the womb, and as you are moving around and you're starting to grow and you're gaining this. We don't have that natural notion of understanding. The other part of our tradition teaches us that we are completely knowledgeable in the womb. We know all things. And then when we are birthed, the angel goes beep, and it all goes out. And that's our parents' responsibility to teach us, right? That's why we have.
Angel's name is Lila.
Lila?
Yeah, I asked someone, I mentioned
I've
that.
not heard that.
Well, I asked someone last week, what's the name of the angel who goes?
Of course,
the lips?
Dory. I asked someone last week, like.
No, not last week. I asked a different rabbi.
Yeah.
It just happened to come up in a conversation. I go, we were
That's what I
talking
love
about
about it.
angels. And I go, what's the angel? So they're like, I don't know the name, because I thought it was a different name. So of course I Googled it, Wikipedia'd it, whatever. So the name of the angel is Lila. I think it's so funny that you're saying that,
Funny.
I mean, the night and that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the midrash, that's why we have that little indent right here, that's like as your birth, there's like a little doop, and that wisdom.
But the question is,
Knowing this
after we
release.
have like 40 ultrasounds, do we have the indention while we're in utero? Or not?
We have to ask the
You
modern.
know, look at
We
your
have to
3D
ask the
ultrasound.
modern pregnant.
We have to-
lady.
we have to look at those.
3D ultrasound.
Right, I was like, no, thank you, no, that, right here,
It's it's called your philtrum.
yeah, right here. The interesting thing about, so I did not have 3D ultrasounds, I was like, that's like a little too much info for me, but anyway. It'd be interesting to know, I don't know,
From out there.
question. Okay, who, Jack and then Spencer.
You know, when I try to think of Moses' position in times of today, my question in studying religion is, when did Jesus become God? In this case, Moses is the same position to the people that follow him, even though it's known that God exists and the Father, the Son. It's when I speak to people who have not studied religion but are religious. Somehow Jesus has become God, similar to Moses' position at this time. I know that's kind of way out, but it
No, it's not
helps
that-
me understand it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I wanna be cautious in the sense from a Jewish perspective is that we don't attribute to Moses qualities of divinity. Whereas we would with, you know, as is, Jesus is imbued with a sense of divinity, whereas Moses is not. And Moses, as well as God, as well as the people, do see that distinction, and they will also, like, I think for them, this is about, you're the human being standing in front of me that is saying that you're gonna lead me to a better place, and this is awful. Right, like they can access him in ways that they can't access the divine quite yet. That they don't know how to do that yet.
Yeah, but
I
Hold
don't
on a
think,
second, Spencer and then Scott.
I don't mean to go backwards, and this might, but I'm wondering if God had maybe a secondary motivation to the whole Egyptians chasing him and drowning in the sea thing. If you go back, can you go back a couple verses? There's a moment when he says, so the Egyptians will witness. A couple of verses previous. Keep going. And then Israelites. Something in there. Yep, there it is, in 4. Egyptians shall know that I am God, and they did so. I'm wondering if maybe one day another Pharaoh were to come, or this Pharaoh were to rebuild his army, and say, go around the Red Sea, because God been split for them, and go after the Israelites again in the wilderness, or try to take them when they go into the land of Zion. Because Israel was still Egypt was very strong civilization for many, many centuries later. I'm wondering if this was maybe to say, don't you dare go after them, because I'll do this to you.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of truth to that, as well as not just contextually, but I think larger context and this, and when this is. If we take off our theological lens, we put on our scholarly lens, and we're trying to figure out who wrote this and why are they writing it, right? We allow ourselves to ask those questions when we take off our theological lens and we put on the scholarship lens of understanding what is the author trying to say here, right? If what is the author responding to in terms of the context in which they're living in that moment that they're writing this, meaning. We're a small group of people living amongst a foreign land and a foreign people. We are not the majority, we are the minority. And how do we make it clear that, you know, we are a people that has this strong attachment to God, and God is one, and God is almighty, and God is powerful, right? Are they responding to the fact that they're being demonized by the land in which they're living in? Are they responding to the fact that they are a small population amongst a much larger population in which there are not good relations, or maybe there's potentially positive relationships, but just no, just know that we are a people that has this relationship with the almighty powerful God, right? What are you also trying to articulate to your children that you're trying to raise up in this home, who are also being now impacted and interested by the culture that's around them, that's not Jewish, right? Like, there's all these really interesting questions that arise when we allow ourselves to see this story as a story that's being written by a human hand, trying to demonstrate where they're living, why they're living, and how to keep them all together.
Can I follow up?
Okay, yes, and then Dory.
If indeed this is written by
Oh,
human,
Scott, then Dory.
if indeed this is written by human hand and therefore they're trying to say parents are passing down a message to the children, maybe they're passing down, God offered, so God offered to show the Egyptians his power, and the Egyptians denied him. And then we succeeded. And almost in the way we are a powerful people because God is with us, and other people reject that and they are conquered.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable too. Did you have something, Scott?
Yeah, but I wanna.
Alright, Tori.
I'm just gonna say there are times in history, and we've all been here, recent history, where you have a giant tidal wave in Thailand, you have giant horrible earthquakes all over the world, like in the Pacific Rim. We have hurricanes and it could be a giant snowstorm. And there's some point where, as a human being, you have to look at these events, and they're natural events, but they're beyond our control. And I think the average human being will put that event in, whether you want to call it God, or there is some power higher than us.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter if you're the richest guy, if you're Bill Gates, it doesn't matter if you're the guy who owns Amazon, it doesn't matter, Bezos. If that happens to be at that day, that occurrence happens, something's gonna possibly happen to you. It doesn't matter where you're living, what boat you're in. And I think at some point, we're gonna do it religiously, say that's God's hand, and not his hand, but that's God's action. And we're gonna attribute it to him. And I think other people are going to say, wow, that's whatever, but that's higher than us, that's higher than any government, that's higher than anything, because we had no control over that. No control, right? So what I'm gonna say is this particular comment, that the Egyptians shall know that I am God, this kind of event was that kind of event.
Interesting.
Uh,
Hold on one second, okay, go. And then Bobby, your hand's up?
And the splitting of the sea is
Okay, Bobby, and then I'm coming to you. Hold on,
I think that when the Egyptians came to follow the Israelites, it was more to push the Israelites to make a decision. I don't care about what it meant for the Israelites to see God's power. That was so that the Israelites would have to make a choice. They could either return to Egypt because they were afraid to go forward. They could stay where they were and have the waters close in on them and kill them, or they could make a choice and believe that God was going to save them. And I think the Israelites were there to push them to make a very important decision, which was to go straight, to go forward, and to believe that they would be at some point saved. And so they went from the slavery, the physical slavery, into freedom, which in itself imposes sort of slavery of the mind, because you then have to make your own decisions because you're going to have free will. And in order for them to grow into that, they had to wander for 40 years because they were children.
Beautiful, thank you.
Well, I was thinking about what Dory was saying, and do you think that the human recorders that created this use that natural event as an analogy for everything that we're talking about today? You know, whether it literally happened or not. But it happened, that physical event of the sea party.
Yeah.
And they sort of tied it together to bring the message that we are speaking of today.
Yeah, I think you can say yes to all of that. I also think that it's a really compelling story.
Yes.
We're still talking about it. I mean, really, like, yeah, thousands of years later, we're still talking about it. And it's a story and this is a moment, which is also really interesting, if you think about all the moments in the Torah. All of them. This is a moment that we sing 3 times a day. Mikamocha. This is in our everyday worship, it's not just Shabbat. Mikamocha is a pivotal central part of our worship service. And it occurs before the Amidah. It leads us into the Avot, into the Amidah, the standing prayer, which is the centerpiece, like in terms of the liturgical framework. It is at the center of the worship service, and Michamocha leads us into that. That in order for us to stand open and vulnerable before God in prayer, we have to experience redemption at the sea. That's a really interesting, like, beautiful concept if you think about it. That as the service in our liturgy is constructed, that in order to stand before God with the Amidah, we have to sing the words that were sung after we experience the splitting of the sea. Before we can offer the prayers of our own hearts and our souls, before we stand there and we acknowledge that we are standing vulnerable before God, we repeat the words that we repeated when we crossed the sea. There's something really interesting about that. That personal redemption is what's going to lead us to communal revelation. Even though we were communally redeemed from Egypt and crossed the sea, everyone had to move their feet individually to get across the sea. It wasn't a swooping wind that carried us across the sea. It wasn't eagles on the eagle's wings that we were carried across the sea. We had to walk. We had to walk. There's really something quite profound about the image of that our own 2 feet had to walk across that dry sea floor and get to the other side. And then individually, each of our voices joined together in the singing of Shirat Hayam, the song of the sea. 1 second. And we experience that moment, and then we begin to walk again, and takes us to the base of the mountain, X amount of days later, that then we experience revelation. So personal redemption is what allows us to stand communally to receive and experience revelation.
Well, could you say that one more time? I'd like to, can I record that?
Personal redemption is what leads us to communal revelation, to communal receiving. If you didn't experience the redemption or move yourself individually towards redemption,
yeah,
how could you be open and prepared to receive revelation? And although each aspect of this is done in community, because we communally move across the sea, we communally stand at the base of the mountain, it is as if each and every one of us receives that Torah individually. So there's an individual and a communal element to each of these rituals. But the idea that you have to be redeemed to experience revelation is really quite interesting. And the movement. That's what I find so powerful about this portion, is that there's an energy and a movement. There's like, I can hear it in my mind when I read the text of, like, you can hear the footsteps, you can hear, like, the wind is going, the animals are making sound, like the bags are falling off the donkey on one side and you're pushing them back on because you're moving faster, right? Like you keep moving, the kids, you gotta pull them up, you gotta pull them along with you, you gotta, like your robe is falling on one side, you're pulling it up, like you can hear, like there's a sound to the rhythmic reading of the text, which I find enhances the energy of this moment. It's not just like, and they left Egypt and stood at the sea. You're like, wow, right? Like there's redemption songs, right? Like there is a cadence to it, and I think it's intentional, because it's asking us to hear the urgency and to feel the urgency But also in that urgency, there's so many powerful theological and questions that are coming up for each of the people that are experiencing this moment in time, which we then relive multiple times in a day in worship. All right, so let's get to this scene. Hold on, I'm gonna stop share because I think it makes people dizzy online. It makes me dizzy, so I'm gonna just do that.
Just control the weather.
Here, let me just get to this part, because I think it's here. So now they're standing at the seashore, okay? I moved just ahead a little bit. Okay, so here we go. And it came, all right, so here, the angel of God who had been going ahead of the Israelite army now moved and followed behind them. Remember, the angel's out front, leading them towards the sea. Now all of a sudden, the angel of God comes behind them, and the pillar of cloud shifted from in front of them and took a place behind them, serves as a barrier between the Israelites and the Egyptian army that's advancing. And it came between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. Thus there was the cloud with the darkness. And it cast a spell upon the night, so that the one could not come near the other all through the night. Again, think about where we were in Egypt with the death of the firstborn. It was an overnight experience. Here we are again, an overnight experience, right? And there's that angel again. This is not the angel of death, it's the angel of God, okay? Then Moses held out his arm over the sea, and God drove back the sea with a strong east wind all that night, and turned the sea into dry ground. The waters were split. Okay, so for the rabbis, this wasn't enough for them. Okay, this moment wasn't enough. Look, all of you are leaning in because you want to know what happens next. The rabbis are leaning back saying, not enough, not good enough, right? Because the rabbis say something's missing. What do you mean? There's this cloud and the seas are getting, and the seas, and Moses held out his arm and then it just splits. Like, for them, that's like, there's something missing. What happened between the cloud of darkness and Moses raising his arms up? It's too close together. Something else has to happen. And they create the midrash about Nachshon. Everyone familiar about Nachshon, or should I tell? Okay, Nachshon. Here's Nachshon. Nachshon ben Aminadab is standing at the seashore at this moment of darkness. The cloud is behind them. There's dark. You can hear the chariots of Pharaoh. They know that the army is advancing. Nachshon looks in front of him and says, there's an ocean and no one can swim. We have a problem. For Nachshon, though, that's not where it ends. It's where it begins. For Nachshon inherently believes and has faith that God is going to get them across. And so for Nachshon, he begins to move forward into the sea. He gets into the water and the water rises to his ankles. And he keeps walking. Then the sea rises and it gets to his knees and he keeps walking. The water gets to his waist and he keeps walking. The water gets to his shoulders and he keeps walking. The water gets all the way up to the top of his forehead. And it's in that moment that the sea splits. That it's not that it was Moses' lifting of his arms and the sea splits. It's that Nachshon had the faith to walk forward, knowing that God was going to perform a miracle. For the rabbis, that midrash was pivotally important in order to create a relationship amongst the people of Israel and God, to know that you walk with faith, that you maneuver through your life with faith, not just waiting for Moses to hold out his arms and split the sea. That it's not the one guy, Moses, that has the faith. It's us. Each and every one of us individually has to walk with the faith. That we cannot rely just on Moses to hold out his arms and that miracles will happen. For the rabbis, that message wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough to say to the people, live your life in the hopes that there will be a Moses who will hold out their hands for you and call upon God to perform a miracle of which you are the beneficiary. That for the rabbis was a no-go. That the midrash, the Nachshon example, is saying you and me and you and you and you and all of us have the power to be a Nachshon. That you should have the strength and the conviction of your own faith to walk into the sea. That if we're always waiting for a Moses to hold out the staff, what kind of a life of faith does that imply for us? That we're waiting for someone else to do it.
Yeah.
That we're waiting to be led by somebody. That wasn't the paradigm that the rabbis wanted us to perceive and understand ourselves in the context of a life of faith. That we're not living through an intermediary. We got rid of that after we destroyed the temple. Not we did, but it was
Is there a biblical reference to Nacho, or is it a complete?
Midrash. That's the beauty of Midrash, right? Because the rabbis are reading this thing, there's a gap. There's a gap between the moment of that the cloud descends into darkness, and then Moses holds out his arm and the sea splits. And what they say is not only is there a gap, but for them, they're wrestling with the fact that say, like, wait a second, really? We just have to wait for one guy to hold out their hands and then we just walk across the sea? Or to say that miracles have to be because somebody else opened their arm and said, bring a miracle. They don't believe, right? Like, this is about empowering us as the individuals to understand that we have access to walk with faith. That's very powerful. It's a very different understanding of what it means to live a religious, spiritual life. And a life that you have the power to create through a faith-based relationship. Right?
A lot of people think those are two different things, religious and spiritual.
I know they do, and I
Religious is
intentionally
following
put them
the law,
together.
Spirit is following the spirit.
Right. I don't know how you separate those two.
I
Me.
can introduce you to some people who do.
No,
It's just in case you want to.
That's like, pray,
So-
pray to God that everything depends on him and act like everything depends on you. I kind of botched that.
Yeah,
no, you didn't, I took, right.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's that thought.
Yeah, I think that there's.
I've been reading it, yeah. Pray as if everything depends on God, act as if everything depends on you, yeah. So one of the things. I think that's in Mishkan Tefillah right before the Amidah, isn't it? I think so, I think it is. It's like the left side of the page right before the Adonai Sefatah. So the, what I find, so this is like a personal soapbox moment, so just so you know. I grew up going to a Schechter day school. So I was in class with lots of Jewish family kids from multiple backgrounds, denominations. And it was part of the language, the semantics of the language was, how religious are you? Right? Like that's just part of the ethos of, constantly wanting to define one's or some other's religiosity. I loved my day school. This is not a reflection on my day. I loved my day school. My love of Judaism was fostered within those classrooms. My Judaica teacher in kindergarten is one of the reasons I'm a rabbi. Okay, she was just amazing. But what I found so that, and also growing up in the shtetl of Miami Beach, where like I didn't know a non-Jewish person until I went to high school in Key Biscayne. I found it so, even as a child, very challenging to constantly be using a word that I truly found so deeply personal to me, religious, to be a word to define one's relationship, whether you are Orthodox or non-Orthodox. So and I grew up in a way and in a place in which I am comfortable in many different settings of worship, like. I can find comfort with a mechitza, just like I can find comfort in obviously in a non-mechitza setting. Like, there are moments when I love to stand on the women's side, and there are moments where I love to be amongst everyone. That's just my own personal theology. So for me, it was very troubling that we are using language to define one's practice by a word that became a delineator of whether you are defined as Orthodox or non-Orthodox. For me, how I understand, are you religious? Yeah, I am. I am. Are you spiritual? I really am. Am I both? You betcha. Right? I don't believe that they are labels that one has to wear and has to then say, I am not this because I am this. The beauty of our tradition is that they are so intermingled, they're like a Havdalah candle. Religious and spiritual are commingled. Because to have that sense of a spiritual connection, I don't know how you separate that from the notion of religious or religion or faith. I don't know why we have to define them differently. And it's okay. Some people do, and that's where their comfort is. But I truly think that's from a place of not truly understanding what our tradition offers us, and with all of those frames, that there is such power in saying, I can connect religiously to the words on this page. Are you trying to say, what is my observance? Sure, we could talk about that. But let's talk about it as observance. Let's not talk about it as religious. That was my soapbox moment. I'm done. I just think that it's an important, I believe so strongly in it. Because I think what we have done, language is so important. Language is so important. There is our entire tradition is made up of language. And all of these words on the page, the translation of that is somebody's language, is somebody's commentary on the text. So my commentary on religious versus observance versus spirituality versus faith is a commentary, and it's a personal commentary. And it's the opening for an incredible dialogue of what we could create together if we were willing to have those conversations in meaningful ways.
And the only reason this came up is because I had a conversation with somebody who was observant.
You could say that's great.
Religious.
Observant.
Very observant.
Yeah.
And does not accept anything, any midrash.
Okay.
Okay, when you have a conversation, if it's not in the Torah, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, those are called Karaites.
Legal.
There's a religion called Karaites.
No,
That's
fascinating.
what they believe.
And it's impossible to have.
They're Jewish though.
Okay, right, like, Zach is fine.
Yeah.
All good to me, right, like, it's great, totally great, right, great.
That was the only point.
Right, like, great. So like, and that's okay, but I think I know you can be both. From my understanding of those words, right,
I hear you,
which I think is so powerful,
which I
because-
think I am, but.
right, and that's, and you can be right, by the way. It doesn't matter, it's like, that's their commentary on the text. That's their commentary on the word. Beautiful. The reason why we have thousands of bookshelves of books is because we have lots of commentary,
Yeah.
right? It's all commentary. Yeah,
You challenged me earlier.
And then Bobby.
You challenged me earlier, and I wanna answer that. You asked me, why do I think Nachshon is all bad?
yeah.
Yeah.
Why did he think Nachshon was an old man?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And throughout this class, I've thought about it, and I think it's because Nachshon is so willing to not just believe, but walk into the water. And I feel like that comes from not only a place of faith, and not the blind faith of a young person who says, well, if I drown, I drown, but an older man who thinks with a sense of wisdom and experience in addition to that faith. And I think it takes that wisdom and that experience to have that deeper, more, maybe we'll find out kind of faith. And not the blind, well, I'm young, whatever, I'm not gonna die, you know?
Well, used to die at like 50, so he probably was a young man.
In terms of,
I'm just saying, he wasn't 85, most likely, you know.
yeah, but in the-
But that's okay, so, but Spencer, that's beautiful, that's your midrash, like, that's your commentary, and I think that's beautiful, right, like, there's so many different ways that we can interpret Nafsha,
Yeah,
but I
it's
think,
Dr.
like,
Tomlinson. Is Robbie out of his meeting yet?
Bobby, you're up.
You know what, Rob?
Bobby, I don't hear you.
Good.
You're muted, Bobby.
Okay,
there you-
okay.
yeah.
I almost
Yeah.
forgot what I was gonna say, but I just remembered.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, it was kind of off the topic in a way, but I was just thinking about the people in the Holocaust who went into the, I don't know if this is Midrash, but went into the gas chamber singing Ani Mami, and I have
Right,
perfect faith. And, it kind of made me sad. That's all.
yeah. Yeah, beautiful. No, I mean, it's also beautiful. Not just sad, I think that it's also like a beautiful reflection of what faith means. Faith doesn't only mean that you see a miracle in your faith. Right, like faith also means that faith walks us and comforts us in moments of deep despair and darkness. Right, faith is that peace that guides us. When we sometimes don't know what else to, then there's nothing else really to follow, right, that sustains us, so that's beautiful, thank you for sharing that. Yeah,
Just going back to an earlier conversation, the gentleman was making reference to Jesus and that the people were being discouraged from making Moses the deity, whereas Christianity went a different way and in fact imposed the deity on the person. And then go forward even to 250 years ago, when George Washington had the opportunity to become a king, to become a deity. He said, no, it's gonna be the people, it's not gonna be one person, me saying what the rules are. It's gonna be the people that are gonna decide what to happen. And that was carried out just 200 years ago.
Maddie.
I think that a lot of what we're saying is from our highly evolved cognitive minds. We're educated. We're from a country that, there's a lot of openness to thinking and access to a lot of information. But if we zero in on what this population lived, they were relatively unsophisticated. There were some very, and I'm just supposing all this, that, at that time, and there were some very wise sages, and there were people who evolved into higher thought. But the whole trip, the journey, really epitomizes an evolution in your thinking, just as you said.
Yeah.
So that each individual who God gave self-will needs to evolve and go into a different mindset. I think as slaves, there was a sense of, acceptance and, quiet surrender. And this whole concept of freedom has been undefined in a way that they had to adjust and make their own determination. And as they walk and as they gave birth to new children through this whole, 40 years, it seems that they could develop their minds to embrace the what if. So, what we're saying is based on a perspective we have now and a knowledge we have now. Looking back, we're very wise. But I'm really appreciating your saying that you're walking in their shoes. Thank you.
Beautiful. So here's what I want to leave you with. It's called crossing. Every journey of liberation crosses the sea. Pursued by a vicious past, surrounded by fragile miracles, on a steady march to an unknown destination. Every journey of liberation begins at midnight, in the darkest hour of oppression, with the blood of a sacrifice, with secret signs and anxious anticipation. Let us sing a song of salvation, a song of absolution, benevolence, and compassion, of deliverance, freedom, and emancipation, of power, rescue, and release, of pardon, restoration, and reprieve, of the might and the mercy of our Maker, of God's generosity and grace. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, michamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei fela. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Let every journey of liberation end on the opposite shore, exhausted but jubilant, on the edge of an undiscovered land, with shouts of joy and delight, when our struggle leads to redemption. Amen.
Amen.
May you be the nachshons of your own life. Take the first step, see where it
You
goes.
know what that song, that poem reminded me of is people, with substance abuse or mental health issues, that the path that they take to become.
Yeah, and it can, that's beautiful, and it can all, at any time that we're on a journey. Right, anytime when you're standing in a place of not knowing.
Yeah.
Through the same,
Deepness of the.
to the ascent. Shabbat shalom, everyone, we'll see you tonight. Yes.
First, I had a very similar experience in my Judaism, I was in Roman Orthodox.
Uh-huh,
I feel like that grounds a lot of, not only that, Hebrew school and all that, but going to that old.